Hey everyone, I'm Summer, and welcome back to my channel where we talk about real life decisions that shape our business, our families, our future, and everything else. This is part of my Teach Me Something playlist where I sit down with experts who help us navigate the moments we are not always prepared for, but deeply impacted by. And today's conversation is one of those. We are talking about divorce, not just the legal process, but the emotional, the financial, and the generational impact that comes with it. My guest today is Regina DeAngelis. She is a reformed family law attorney who spent nearly 3 decades. Don't ask me how. She looks like younger than 3 decades, but she spent 3 decades inside the divorce system as a lawyer, mediator, and a coach. After years of witnessing the damage that traditional divorce can cause, and also going through her own difficult experience, Regina chose to go a different path. Today, she helps families navigate separation and the hardness of it with emotional intelligence, compassion, and clarity. She is the author of 21st Century Family Transition, which is, it's copyrighted, right?
Yes, 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 yes. Trademarked the name and
It's
everything.
trademarked. Beautiful.
Yes.
This book is a modern approach designed to reduce conflict, to protect children, to move families forward without unnecessary trauma. Regina, when people think about divorce, they already expect it to be painful, emotionally, financially, everything else. But I've noticed that many people don't realize much of that pain is actually created by the system itself.
Right. That exactly. Your intro was spot on in terms of divorce is one of those moments that depending on how you proceed through that process,
Mhm.
it impacts every aspect of your life in the present, but then it can also impact your entire family for generations,
Mhm.
to come. So when you're moving through the process, you really have to think of it as how do we evolve this present situation into something that's healthier for everyone? And that's where family transitions was built and what we're trying to do to help couples navigate from the very beginning of a separation. Like,
Mm.
what does it look like now? What do we do next? To all the way through, we've made all of our final decisions and now we're ready to get our paperwork through the court process.
And the system, tracking back a
This
little bit about the system. Should the
Yeah,
system not be resolving it? Why does it seem like the traditional divorce process seem to totally keep escalating the
yeah,
conflict?
that's right. The system is designed, we're talking from this 21st century perspective where we understand how that emotional damage carries through for generations. But our divorce system, and I've um, dealt with jurisdictions all over the United States. I've spoken
Mm-hmm.
in the UK, everywhere I go. And talk about other divorce professionals, the system treats families the same. It is,
Mm.
I mean, it's the legal process. If you think of it as you're literally suing somebody, and when you sue somebody, they become your adversary, and both of you have to defend yourself. And that is when divorce became a legal possibility, which was not
Mm-hmm.
until the early 1900s in the United States. The system was built around traditional legal principles. It's defendant versus or plaintiff versus defendant, and now you each have to prove your side and try to prevail over the other. And that is still the mentality that families in the 21st century go through when they're trying to get divorced the traditional way.
Mm-hmm. It almost sounds like people are pulled into a structure that rewards fighting instead of understanding, right?
Right. It sounds like you get it immediately. That because the attorneys, and this is some of it has to do with systemic problems with our legal system as it applies to families, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you hire an attorney in a business dispute, you expect them to like be gung ho, just what's good for you. Like you're not so concerned necessarily about whether or not you winning is going to have a long-term harm on your
Right.
business adversary, right?
Mm-hmm.
That mentality, when you apply it to families, is completely antiquated. And because of all of our other areas of education and research and, intellectual development as time goes on, we know how family systems work. We know how trauma impacts generations, and the existing system is still just built on that model of it's you versus them, and which one of you is the good guy and which one is the bad guy. It's not building in anything that we know, you said, about emotional intelligence, about neuropsychology and how our biologies react to feeling like we have to defend ourselves or that we're under attack.
Wow. And when people are standing at this crossroads, just starting to think about divorce, the things I have noticed, I haven't gone through a divorce myself, but there are so many people around me. There's fear, there's confusion, sometimes there's urgency. And in that
Yes.
state, people don't seem to always be in the best control of making rational decisions, right? So from
Right.
what you've seen, where do people knowingly or unknowingly make things harder for themselves?
I think you hit it spot on again with the urgency piece. This people, what we find is that when you are able to verbalize you want a divorce or it's time for a divorce, you have that is the hardest moment, I think, in really anybody's life. I was there myself. And by saying those words, you're launching your family into like the great unknown, sort of.
Yeah.
And where they go wrong is this incredible urgency to want it to be over. And the traditional divorce in my area, I'm in the Philadelphia area, it takes 18 months to 2 years just to even have sort of an amicable divorce in our area. And that's pretty consistent nationwide. But if you're feeling super urgent, and you go out and hire an attorney and you think, I'm going to get my spouse's attention, I'm going to get this process started, you don't realize that you're actually setting yourself up for 2 years of basically limbo, of like being anxious, waiting for a phone call from your attorney, or being stressed out because you have a court date and you don't know what's going to happen. You're getting these huge bills. So that urgency and this assumption that I need to start this process, I'm going to go out, I'm going to file for papers. That's a huge pitfall, that people fall into that trap and they don't realize that they have options to kind of take a breath, calm down, and to go slow and steady towards that end result.
So critical. Oh my God, that's frightening sometimes
Yes.
what
And
people go through.
yeah, because the fear piece that you mentioned, like both parties, even the one who says is the one who initiates, both parties are absolutely overcome with fear and the overwhelming stress of like the unknown. And we know again from all sorts of psychological research that, being frozen in fear, that's like a true thing. It's not just an expression.
Absolutely.
And people are frozen, or they're afraid to say the wrong thing. They don't want to talk to their spouse anymore because they're paying lawyers. So there's a lot. The legal system plays into our worst case scenario in terms of our emotional states. Like it is actually perpetuating the fear and the stress as opposed to moving you through it in a productive way and building space for you to calm down your nervous systems.
I'm feeling so sorry about people that are in relationships right now that are feeling toxic, maybe even emotionally unsafe, but they
Yes.
are just as afraid of the divorce process as much as they're afraid of staying. It can feel like there's no good option. So what would you want these people to know?
Yeah, that's a really hard situation. And you know, I've been through this myself, and I have some experience in these situations where the communication feels aggressive all the time. And those people are terrified. And what I find is, again, people who are afraid of losing everything, if you think of it that way, your spouse hears you say you want a divorce, and they're, interpreting that as, oh my God, I'm losing my livelihood, my financial well-being. I'm losing my kids. I'm losing maybe my self-respect because people are going to look at me and think, oh, I failed in some way. So when you say you want a divorce, you are actually triggering that self-defense mechanism in a spouse. And if your spouse is one who tends to get aggressive, the legal system is really giving them a platform for that, because now they have a true legal platform that was designed to allow them to defend themselves. And so people who are in truly toxic situations oftentimes feel that they've been more abused by the divorce process because they go into a hearing and they think they're going to be protected. They don't realize that their spouse is going to have a platform. And I've seen this all the time, like where the spouse is accusing the other person of doing things that they feel like have actually been done to them, so all of a sudden the narrative is flipped and it becomes super traumatic for the person in that situation. What I will say to them is their best resource is education and to really plan out what your vision is. Like, what do you want your future to look like? Really, when it comes to everything, where do you want to live? What do you want to do with the house you're in right now? What is your ideal outcome? And then you can approach your spouse at that point. And we really say, don't even use the word divorce, because we know that's going to trigger this automatic biological response. So you want to say, it's time for us to figure out next steps. And obviously you could speak to a therapist who's going to help you really plan that. We help people plan that in our process. But the key is to keep the need for self-defense out of it, to have the conversation feeling more collaborative, and to get somebody, what a mediator is actually doing is interrupting that toxic communication pattern. So you need someone there so that you don't automatically fall back into the same fight you've been having for 5 years. People fall into these patterns without even realizing they're doing it. And when they're in fear or conflict, their frontal lobe shuts down and they're literally acting out of self-defense mode. You need people to feel safe and calm so they can have calm, rational conversations about these big issues that are going to have long-term impact.
So you're suggesting we change the language around using the word divorce to something like moving forward, and perhaps also getting the help of a therapist.
A therapist to help you craft that and plan it. I think in divorce in general, I really believe that it's time for all of society to change that vocabulary, because families, if they're deciding to divorce, they're at their absolute lowest point emotionally. It's exactly like a death, right? And so you are already struggling, you're already terrified, and the system keeps you there and really perpetuates that. But if we change that narrative around it and say, it's time for you guys to figure out how to get into 2 healthier households. Like, this situation isn't good for anybody. None of you can thrive. Let's figure out how to untangle this to calmly get you into 2 houses. What does that look like? Then you can call yourself a 2 household family. Let's figure out what, the courts would call it the custody schedule. Well, you guys are parents. You have to keep all the balls in the air. Let's figure out the parenting system and what's going to work for you guys as a 2 household family. How do we keep all the balls in the air? So you can soften each piece of it. You're not a broken home. You are a 2 household family. And divorce is an antiquated word. We're really literally severing all of your connections. And we know that that's ridiculous concept. If you've got kids, you're not severing people forever. They're stuck together, and we need to support them in being able to interact around their children and as a family.
2 household family. I'm taking that with me for a longer time.
Yeah,
Just changing the wording around what you're going through can totally make your nervous system feel safer, right?
Right.
Without pulling people into the traditional system and going through all the abuse. That alone changes the conversation entirely, I think.
Right.
You don't feel trapped anymore.
That's right. And you feel like there's a path forward. There's a path that we can figure this out. It's still not, perfect. Divorce touches every aspect of your life, and it's always going to be some sort of stressful, but we can help reduce that stress and help you manage it and avoid increasing it by the traditional system. But people do feel like, okay, there's a sense of relief now. We have a plan for how we're going to communicate. We have a plan for how we're going to make sure the kids can stay in the school that they love, and it doesn't feel adversarial. It feels like problem solving. Like, we've got to figure this out so that we can both thrive down the road.
And for those people that are already in the middle of it, or know that they're going to be heading that way no matter what, the question now becomes, how do I get through this without losing myself? or damaging my
Right.
kids in the process. So
Yeah.
what does it actually look like to move through a divorce with less toxicity, less trauma? The changing the
It-
language was a beautiful idea.
Yep.
What
Changing
more
the
can you add to it?
Yeah, I think changing the language is kind of a foundational piece of it because it's changing your mindset to something along the lines of, I can't change my past. And for
Mm,
most of our clients, most people getting through divorce, they don't honestly wish that they had never been married, right? They're
mm,
recognizing that this relationship isn't what it needs to be or is no longer serving them in some way. So changing the idea from divorce to an evolution. And if you
mm,
know it's coming, to get educated so that you feel comfortable making decisions without having to hemorrhage money to lawyers. Anything about the way a divorce goes, you can
mm.
find on the internet, right? Sometimes, and
Yes.
this, there's a whole profession now of divorce coaches. And what I do is coaching and mediation because I'm coaching through the emotional side and helping them do some of this refocusing. But if you are just contemplating divorce and you feel like, okay, I can see all this on the internet, but I don't know how to interpret it, then
Mm,
schedule a 1 hour consult with a divorce coach who can help
mm,
explain to you how that
mm,
process would go. Um,
mm,
because feeling, that helps you get out of the unknown. Then you feel a little bit confident like, okay, I know we're going to have to figure out these three things. But what the lawyers don't tell you is that in every divorce, it's not a free for all.
mm,
The courts operate within certain parameters. And so
mm,
when we're talking about dividing the assets, they have the law doesn't say like wife gets X and husband gets Y. The
mm,
law gives everyone a set of factors to consider. And
mm,
then once they've considered those factors, the court will divide your assets somewhere between 50-50, and usually on the high end, it's 60-40 in favor of the spouse who earns less, right? So those little nuggets of information, like, oh, wait, we're actually only fighting about 10%. Like, I'm never going to get 80% of everything. Like, no, you're not. Like, there's some common sense things that people can know ahead of time that
mm,
kind of take the arguments off the table. And we're like, okay, well, we can figure it out now that we know what the rules of the game are,
mm.
you know? So,
I can't imagine the mindset of the spouse that's looking for 80% of everything.
well, sometimes I hear crazy things, and this is again like the antiquated piece of it. Like I hear people saying, kind of on both sides. Like sometimes I hear a spouse saying, well, I was earning all the money and she was a stay-at-home mom. So why is she getting half? I'm like,
Mm,
and that again goes back to the history of divorce. And there's a lot going on there with patriarchy and the women's, gender roles in society. But on the other hand of that, I hear women saying, well, what do you mean he could have 50-50 custody? I'm like, it's
mm, mm,
2021. So both parties sometimes come to the process with really antiquated ideas. They're
mm,
working out of a really outdated paradigm. And again, though, when we are like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And so then they can apply to their situation. So, but people can say, we are going to have a divorce agreement that models or kind of mimics what we think would sort of traditionally happen in court. But when you have that education piece, you can also agree to do literally anything that you want. So people don't
mm,
realize that either. When you're divorcing, you're severing all of your ties to each other. But if you're working together and coming up with an agreement, you
mm,
can control all of the timelines. And we have clients all the time that decide to keep vacation homes in joint names sort of indefinitely. That there sometimes you can convert yourself to almost like a business partner. So you
mm,
are divorced, but you've decided that for financial reasons, you're going to keep certain things titled jointly, or you're going to continue to share the profit from certain entities, whatever it might be. You've got the flexibility to do that when you're reaching agreements together with the help of a mediator. A court and the lawyers would never allow you to do that because
mm.
they need to be severing all of your ties to each other.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's a lot people don't realize. And that's why I love, thank you so much. Teach me something. The number one thing I can teach anyone about going through divorce is that you ultimately get to decide. You do not need two attorneys. You do not need to do anything. Literally every decision can be truly yours if you and your spouse agree to it.
This was so much awareness. So many
Yes.
people need this before they enter into something that's going to change their life forever, drastically.
Yes. Yes. And what they don't realize is even if they decide, sometimes on those super toxic situations, I totally get the instinct to hire a lawyer to quote unquote protect yourself. And what
Hmm.
that does in the short term is it will allow you to not have to speak to your spouse if that's what you're going for, right? But people
Hmm.
don't realize that if you spend 2 years barely communicating with the parent of your children,
Mm.
that is not preparing you for the rest of your life in a way that's any kind of healthy, right? That's sort of your worst case scenario for your kids. And so to be aware as well that the way you go through the process is going to impact the next generation and their emotional health and your own. So if you want a healthier outcome, be aware that you can choose a healthier process. And there are many people in the country like family transitions now. We are not alone in this mission of trying to really improve outcomes for families.
Mm. Wow, I'm all about healthier outcomes as well.
Yeah.
To keep your
Yeah.
nervous system safe and to not disrupt your life in a way that is going to hurt you for the rest of your life. Regina,
Right.
this was really, really, really educational. I loved talking to you.
Oh, well,
And you
thank you.
guys, if this resonated with you guys, go connect with Regina. All her links are down below in the description. Regina, what's the best way for people to contact you?
So the best way to find me is through my Facebook page, which is at Family Transitions on Facebook, or my website, which is ftdivorcecoaching.com for family transitions. So, and you can schedule a time to talk on there or watch some educational videos. There's a lot of information I try to put out to get this message out for families.
And your YouTube channel as well.
Oh, and my YouTube channel, thank you, which is at 21st Century Family Transitions.
All those links are right there in the description below, you guys. Take the time to explore Regina's work.
Thank
Understand
you.
what more conscious, compassionate family tradition can look like. And if you're getting
Yes.
value from these conversations, make sure you like and subscribe and share this channel with someone who might really, really need to hear this right now. Because these are conversations that help you make better decisions when it matters the most. Regina, thank you for being such an awesome, awesome guest on my Teach Me Something.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure to be here. I love this is my passion topic. So anytime.
And you guys, I'll see you in the next episode.